Hi, and welcome back to Ronnie the Reader. Today we are going to be doing our March wrap up here on the channel. So when I'm filming this, this is only March 28th, so we do have a couple of days left still in the month. So thus far, I have finished 7 things so far for March, so I'm going to be talking about each of those, but I suspect that I will be finishing an eighth. I'm currently in the middle of, what is this called? The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Tartan, which is the author of the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. He also had another book come out called The Devil in the Dark Water. I really enjoyed Evelyn Hardcastle, wasn't a big fan of The Devil in the Dark Water, and this one I am enjoying so far. I'm about 50% of the way through, so, it has the potential to be 5 stars. We'll see how the ending goes, but I am enjoying it thus far. All right, so now that we got currently reading out of the way, let's talk about the books that I did actually finish in the month of March. Starting first with The Diviners by Libba Bray. I read this from my library. I had it a physical copy from the library. I originally started listening to this book as an audiobook way back in maybe 2018 or 2019 and just really didn't vibe with the way that the narrator was reading the main character. And I found Evie to be really, really annoying, and I just could not get into her head. But reading the book physically, I found her to be a much more enjoyable character. This book is following Evie O'Neill, who is, I think, 17. It's set in the 1920s, and Evie is from Ohio, but she's essentially sent to live in New York with her uncle, who has this museum that kind of collects like artifacts related to like the paranormal world, essentially. And then the book is more of like an urban paranormal fantasy where we go about this investigation that Evie is assisting her uncle with. So it's a really fun kind of mystery and ride, and the magic elements are really fun. There's a lot of different perspectives. You jump through a lot of different characters in the book, so it's always fresh. Every new chapter, it's kind of something new or exciting going on, and the way that the characters are intertwined and kind of relate to each other is interesting, and each character has an interesting mystery. So this was a 5 out of 5 star read for me at this time, which I'm really blown away by and shocked by. I did intend to start Layer of Dreams this month and potentially try to finish it, but just between the month being busy and wanting to read other things, I haven't gotten around to it. So I'm thinking that I'll kind of get to Layer of Dreams in April or May. That one is really long, and my library does have a physical copy of that one as well. But yeah, as far as the Diviners, 5 out of 5 stars. It just really blew me away, and I can see why so many people loved this back in the day. It was really popular when it first came out in like 2012, I want to say. And I remember being on BookTube at that time, and everyone was talking about it and the original cover of this book. And I'm really happy to kind of finally check it off my list as something that I've been interested in more or less for about like 11 or 12 years at this point. So yeah, definitely happy. 5 out of 5 stars. We'll be continuing this series for sure, when originally I thought I would never be returning to this book. The next 2 things I'm going to be talking about together, and that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers graphic novel volumes 3 and 4. I read this month. I did not read these kind of back to back. I read volume 3 earlier in the month and then just read volume 4 at the end of the month. This is a graphic novel series that is a continuation of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which is obviously a really popular, 90s action television show. I feel like any kid that's grown up since the 90s and even before is probably aware of the Power Rangers. This series is kind of a different universe. It's set more in the modern day. It's not set in the early 90s. And while the characters are the same, they're a little bit different in their characterization, and the storyline is nothing that you saw in the show. So we are now getting into what I think is the Shattered Grid arc. Volume 3 is following our characters as they are dealing with kind of loss of powers. And then Volume 4 is dealing with a new villain kind of originally created for the series called Lord Draken. And I know that this arc kind of goes on for a while. So both of these were 5 out of 5 stars. Graphic novels tend to be a little bit easier on. If I'm having a fun time while reading it and I'm not confused, then I typically am going to rate it pretty highly, at least a 4 or 5. And these one are 5 stars just because I think they're fun. I really loved Power Rangers as a kid, so there's a lot of nostalgia there for me, and having a new storyline to follow for these characters is really interesting, and I'm really intrigued on how the series is going to move forward. I think what they've done in the series so far has just been really fun, kind of led to a lot of interesting ways the series can go and introduce more characters that are in the Power Rangers lore. Definitely going to be enjoying the rest of the series. I have up until volume 8 on my shelves. The next book I'm going to be talking about is When There's a Will. This is a male-male romance that I got last year for a Stuff Your Kindle Day event. It is by Anna Sparrow, and it is essentially following two main characters named, oh God, what were their names? Maybe Will, well, obviously Will, Connor, are two men who are living in Australia. Will is originally from the US but has immigrated to Australia a few years ago with his sons at the time who are now adults. And then Connor is a young, um, used to be lawyer, now doing like interior design work. He is in his early 30s while Will is in his mid 40s. So it's kind of an age gap romance. And the main crux of this story is that Connor has to start raising his niece after his sister unfortunately passes away before the baby is born. So this book, I read it, so you'll see more of my thoughts on it in a vlog later on in the summer. I'm reading kind of like steamy male romances because I typically don't read too much smut. There is smut in this book. I don't know if you consider it just a straight up smut book, but there is definitely sex scenes. But anyway, I plan on reading, some more of those types of books because I typically read just like fade to black romances. I don't read a whole lot of sex scenes. So I'm trying to branch out a little bit more. And while that aspect of the book I thought was perfectly fine, I think the chemistry between Will and Connor was good. They had fun banter. I just think the outside circumstances of everything was a lot. And this book is really heavy. You're dealing with the loss of a sister prematurely, who then has to deliver a baby. Well, the baby is born while the mother is no longer alive. And then Connor is dealing with raising this kid while also dealing with grief, while also getting into this new relationship. Something that I wish the story would have done was establish Connor and Will more as a romantic pairing or couple before the baby is introduced, and then have them bond over that baby. Like maybe they went on a date or two and had just started seeing each other, and now they're not sure if they can continue now that Connor has this huge responsibility. Will already has adult sons that he has raised and taken care of. So now is he ready to jump back into being a father as an infant at the age of like 45, I think is how old he is. So there's just a lot. And then towards the end of the book, there's a lot of conflict around the paternity and custody of this child. And it's just a lot. There's a lot of emotions. Ultimately, I gave the book 2 stars. It just didn't work for me because of some of those circumstances. While I really enjoyed the heart of the romance of the story, I thought our characters, like I said, had good chemistry and were a compatible and cute couple. And the sex scenes weren't like too much for me. They were definitely sexy, I guess, but I don't read too much sex scenes, so I don't really know how to rate a sex scene, whether it's good or bad. This one didn't make me uncomfortable, so there's that. But yeah, ultimately the story was 2 stars, just didn't really work for me. All right, the next book that I want to talk about is a little interesting. It's The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. This book I give a 4 star, and it's definitely a novel for sure, but it's more of a short story collection set in the same world as you like progress. So I don't know, it was really interestingly told. Essentially, you were following humanity's need and want to colonize and conquer Mars. So you start the story with our Martian characters who are already living on Mars, and then you follow the progression of when Earth people come to meet them. And so it's really interestingly told. It spans a lot of years. And this book was originally published, I think, in 1950 or maybe 55. I gave the book 4 stars, mostly because I thought some of the shorter stories in the collection dragged. You're following like a different set of characters in a different year each story, and some of them were really fun. Some of them were really different genres. Some stories were more horror, some were more action, some were more psychological, some were more just straight up like science and science fiction and talking about the colonization and how that's going as science. All of the stories kind of share more of like a family aspect, though, and kind of talking about just family dynamics that people have and what is your role in a family and what are like societal roles, both from the Martian perspective and from the Earth scientist perspective. And it was just fun. I listened to it as an audiobook. I'm reading this because of my book club that I do with my two friends, Reese and Callista, something that I definitely am happy to have read, but it's not something that will necessarily stick with me forever or is a new favorite. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is Paper Girls Volume 3. This is another graphic novel that I read for this month. I actually read this and Volume 4 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the same day. Paper Girls is following a story of four girls in the 80s who kind of get transported on this like science fiction journey through time and space, and each volume is just kind of a new step on that journey, and you kind of learn a little bit more about our characters each time. So this was a 4 out of 5 star for me. Mainly what I feel like the story is lacking for me and why it's not a complete 5 out of 5 stars is I really like it, I really enjoy it, but I just wish that we were moving a little bit faster towards answers. I feel like there's a lot of questions set up in each volume, but there's not a whole lot of answers yet. Where are we at in the story? There's just a whole lot of setup still, I think, in these first 3 volumes. Maybe other people disagree, but that's just kind of how I feel. I just feel like there's not enough forward momentum for me to really be like, oh my God, this is like one of my new favorite things and I'm so obsessed and I need to know. It's more so like, okay, I would just like to know, please, now. Like, maybe that's just an issue with me being impatient. But yeah, so this was a 4 out of 5. Not too much to say. I'm still enjoying the series, and I thought that this particular volume was really like beautiful, and the setting that we were in this volume is probably my favorite so far from a visual standpoint. So that was really fun. And I think that next volume and the way that we've set up some things should be really interesting. All right, and then finally, the last thing that I'm going to be talking about for the month of March is, of course, Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I made a whole vlog for this book, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it was a 5 out of 5 stars. This is a Hunger Games prequel where you are following Hamish Abernathy, who is the winner of the 50th Hunger Games. And of course, we know him from the original trilogy as Peeta and Katniss's mentor. Sunrise really is just emotional and beautiful and heartbreaking and brutal. I use that word a lot in my review in my vlog for it. And ultimately, the way that the story was told and constructed felt so more mature for kind of the age range. It's still a young adult book for sure, but it just read a lot more mature, and something I talked a lot about in the vlog. And I think something that's really sat with me about the book is just how that the writing was so evolved, and you, in order to have a really impactful, like, horror-esque story, like, you don't always have to be super graphic or gory to do that. This book obviously has a little bit of gore considering we are in death games, but it's never grotesque, it's never over the top, it's never exploitative, and I just loved that aspect of this book so, so much. And so it was a 5 out of 5, and I'm so happy that Suzanne Collins decided to release this prequel. All right, so that is everything that I finished for the month of March. So definitely let me know how your March reading went. I love hearing people's wrap ups and what they liked, what they didn't like. And yeah, so that's all for me. Until I have another video, I will talk to you then soon. Bye.